What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue just the conversation on death and dying. My dog ended up passing away last night, and wanted to kind of share that entire experience, for others that are possibly dealing with that same scenario, grieving the loss of their pet. My dog was almost 20 years old, and I guess in people years it'd be like 140, years old, which is a long life for a dog, especially a larger breed dog like mine was. Had a lot of memories, the entire time being in this house. She's been here, so it's definitely some adjusting to go through, and I didn't realize how much, like mental energy, I was like having on just like tending to her needs, and kind of structuring my day to let her outside and all these kinds of things. It'll be kind of replacing those with new things, I guess, but like yeah, I just wanted to share kind of this process, because it was pretty intense. I mean, really intense, and it wasn't what I expected, and there were some, periods of like, oh, did I do the right thing, and everything else, because I basically the entire time I've had my dog, never really even went to the vet. She was always just healthy, and I always took care of her. And so the idea of like euthanizing her, bringing her to a strange place with a strange person, I just had a lot of faith that God was going to give her a good death. And by a good death, if you've ever watched, people, especially people progress through these different, I don't know, illnesses, or just, my dog, I think she just got old and died. I don't really know what's going on. It's just had this like, just like shortly after my dad died, then she starts showing signs and symptoms of like weird behavior and stuff. And I didn't really talk about it much on here, mainly because I didn't want to put out that energy, because I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't want to speak, negatively or whatever. But I guess maybe looking back, it would have been maybe more of a value for others to kind of share that, because a lot of times, when you listen to like spiritual people and stuff like that, in the law of assumption, law of attraction, it's like, oh, they just got such an easy life, and things are just going effortlessly and smooth and all that. But I found it to be more of when faced with these challenges and these beliefs and assumptions, that you have to face these fears with God, ultimately to let them go and grow faith, but to also to grow. And in that, a lot of times there's really uncomfortable periods of time, and that was what was going on with me. The last video I think I put out was a few days ago, and she had stopped eating at that point. I was, I think, just starting to refuse water at that point then too. And I was able to just try to like wet her whistle a little bit with an eyedropper, but even that she kind of refused after a while. And like going through that whole process, I used to work in a nursing home. Like when I was in high school, it was like my second job. My first job was at KFC. Second job was working weekends as a janitor, actually an environmental service engineer according to them, but I worked the weekends out there. And you, after a while of working in that kind of environment, because most of the death and dying process, at least in my area, is confined to hospitals and nursing homes especially, and a lot of that stuff is not in the home anymore. Not always true. My neighbor, my old neighbor's mom died at home. My grandma on my dad's side died at the house. And the family took care of her and stuff, and that is an option, for people. But for the most part, it seems like culturally that's kind of the flow. As you get old, you go in a nursing home, and then it's kind of out of sight, out of mind until things really start to progress. But like when I worked at that nursing home, I noticed this pattern that kind of emerged, where it was like there's like the death and dying, where it's like like a terminal thing, it's like something is like impending. Which was kind of what was my dog was experiencing in her last bit. Just knowing like, I don't think this is going well, but at the same time staying hopeful, for praying for miracles and seeing them, seeing her recover, bounce back, have good days, have periods of time where things were like, stable and stuff like that. I think I actually did a stream when I think it was maybe a year or two ago. She ate a bunch of rat poison, and I thought she was going to die then, but she made a miraculous recovery. She didn't even get sick from that. I gave her charcoal right away, and I think that saved her life at that time. But ever since, I was like really mindful of like, man, my time is this dog is limited, and I want to make sure to give her all the things I desired to have for her, which included mainly just getting really expensive dog food, because like most of her life, she was just like eating the same. Because I was like poor and shit too. I mean, like, so like the food I was eating was not that good of quality either, but like I'd get her like the $8-9 bags of food, and she seemed to enjoy that, just the hard dog food. But then, after that experience, I started just like, if this is gonna be her last hurrah with me, it's like I'd like to, you know, bring some heaven to her life, and like what kind of heaven would a dog like? I think a lot of it would just be food, and that's like kind of what I like, I guess, where, so I was getting her like pretty expensive dog food, and just getting her new stuff all the time, and she enjoyed that for a while, you could tell, but like moving into like the progression of things, it's like it was like kind of the terminal thing where it's just like noticing she's having issues with this walking a little bit, having issues with the bathroom, having all these kinds of like balance issues and whatnot. Nothing terrible. She'd always kind of like catch herself and like kind of walk it off. And so when it came to like the next stage, that I even noticed this at the nursing home, where it's just like kind of like comparable to like her refusing to eat and drink, noticing like that same kind of like lethargy, and just starting to just not move very much, just being most of the time tired, not really having much going on. But mentally, you could see in their eyes they're still kind of there, and they're still the same being, and being supportive and whatnot. And I noticed the same thing at the nursing home. When people started going down that trajectory, you start noticing them sleeping more, being in their beds, not really getting around much, seeming like lethargic and tired. But then like the final stage is like this vacant look in the eyes on some level, almost like this gauntness to their appearance, almost like skeleton-y, where it's just like kind of blindly staring at things, not really having a lot of attention and focus in the here and now, but maybe total attention in the here and now. It's like that's the other part, not to project own things onto others, but like seeing that progression where it's like they're starting to stare off into space. It looks like they're just barely even conscious anymore, and then like the inevitable process. But like a lot of that, I didn't ever see the actual dying by their bedside type thing. And even with my own dad, for one, I didn't think he would wanted that, and he died on Christmas, and it was like my grandbaby's first Christmas, and like that it was just kind of one of those things of saying goodbye, but then trying to be there for the kids on Christmas, and not try to have it be a big emotional drama filled thing and like ruin their Christmas and have another kind of thing going on. But like and so I wasn't able to like fulfill that kind of like be by your bedside no matter what type thing. But like I said, not to say that I think he preferred to be alone in processing that last bit. I didn't think he wanted people to see him like that, and I definitely don't think he wanted like people to be like begging him to stay around longer, what I mean? And so like so there was that, and that was difficult, just psychically knowing that that he was enduring that kind of stuff, not being there. But then with my dog, it was like a different situation where it's like there's no way I'm gonna have her like deal with this alone, just because it's just like really putting a lot of my own. I mean, we just shared this bond, it's like feeling like traveling through time and space, and multiple versions of reality. And like and she was very grounding, she was very peaceful. And the thing of it is, I had a lot of fear, even for her. I don't think she had any type of fear really. She seemed to accept it very, very nobly, I guess. But for me, knowing not to be praying for like some miraculous thing, but just to that that she feels love and peace and joy, and that God gives her a good death is ultimately what I was hoping and praying for. And in that there was a lot of facing the unknown together. And this went on for once things really went downhill yesterday. It was an all-day thing. It was like, sitting by her side. I had her on her dog bed. I pulled it out to the couch and stayed on the couch, and she sat right next to me the whole time. And like yeah, feeling a lot of like uncomfortable energy regarding it. I kept looking down and seeing how she was doing, and that whole day yesterday, it was just like didn't want to leave her side, but I did have like responsibilities. I have basically a farm. I have like chickens that needed fed and let out, and I had cooked dinner for my family and stuff. My wife's out of town, so I had to cook for my stepdaughter and that. And so besides those little things, running to the store, and it was for the majority I was staying by her side. And I didn't know what to expect, and I had fears, that she would have like a bad death that was really traumatic and awful. And even with that, I looked towards like Jesus and the way he died in a traumatic and awful way. He was still able to endure that. And watching nature and stuff, you see how like things eat other animals while they're still alive, and there's like a lot of what you could judge as like a bad or difficult death. I would say my dad's death was not the greatest in the world. I wouldn't want to experience that, but me personally, I just would prefer a sudden thing versus like holding on for days and days and days. It's like that's awful, but like but that's just my opinion. I think everybody has like whatever way ends up happening is a way that just wakes you up on some level, and there's a meaning behind it that maybe is something to unpack as things like go on. But looking at what happened with her, it was like once the afternoon hit, once dinner came and she was still breathing and stuff, it was like you could start to see the look in her eyes start to change, and I knew at that point that she was slipping into either unconsciousness or slipping away. And looking at that, I felt a lot of fear as to what's next. Is like, is she going to start having difficult time breathing? Is she going to start having violent seizures or whatever? And I hear like a lot of people like, well, that's why we just euthanize and put them down like that. But again, it was like one of those things, like I wouldn't like euthanize my wife, I don't think, but you never know. I got to a point with the dog, if I had a ability to fucking shoot her in the head, I probably would have, just because it was like it's just like my own stuff. That was my feeling, because it was hard for me. Who knows how she was experiencing things, but like that was just kind of how I was feeling at one point, where it's like I'll never do that. But then you start seeing her start to go downhill, and it's like, well, why not just save her the trouble? And so it's like I understand where people are coming from with that. If I had to make the choice again, having gone through it again, it was like she's never been to a vet, and like it was always just been at the house with me. And so if she had been out in nature, she would have been having to deal with the same thing. And so that's how I kind of looked at it, and throughout the whole thing, I endured it with her, so it's like, yeah, physically she might have been feeling, but emotionally and psychically I was going through the same shit with her. But trying to check the mental stories of fear of like, well, what if the next thing that happens is she starts yelping and crying and has a bad death or whatever. But looking at asking in prayer is just accepting what was unfolding as being part of a perfect process was challenging. But then at one point, after the dramas had passed and you knew things were progressing even more, and like it got to a point where her eyes were just focused on really nothing. You go like that in front of her, nothing, and it was like, oh, she's obviously like unconscious or something, at this point. And at that once there was no reactivity and no kind of like her essence was already in the absolute on some level, with what was going on. looking at everything that was going on from there on as just like waiting for her to be born, born into the spirit. And that was very comforting, because at first, the mental narratives were like, oh, I'm dying, or she's dying, I'm losing her, I'm losing my friend, I'm losing all this attachment, which I think is a big part of the dying experience, is letting go of all of these attachments and letting go, being forced to let go of them, and with that, looking at, how these things are going, as God's in control of this. She's, any at any moment, now she can join in with the one consciousness, and be, drop the body and drop all the pain that she was in, drop the dysfunction, drop the shell of what she was, because that's not even what she was. She's, not the body, and going through, just even watching that just with an animal like that, compared to like a human, I think we all go through the same cross that we have to bear at the end, and as much as we try to, not think about that, I think it's important to at least be aware, that as you work on your spiritual progression, these different fears that emerge, instead of running from them, instead of hiding from them, instead of like pushing them away and pretending like it's not something that you ever have to mess with, like death is a thing that you're a spectator of. Not to say that God won't give you a long life or anything, but I feel like once it's time for that part of the evolution of consciousness to your whatever, then it's it is what it is. And so Jesus endured it, but the body is only one part, and I think a big part of like the attachments we have of those are ego attachments, and identifying with our old self and our old nature, of like, oh, they're dying, they're separating from us even more, that's even more reason to believe in separation. Whereas you can look at it through a different lens of looking at it like, they're being born, they're into their immortal self, they're one with love, joy, peace, all the fruits of the spirit, because they're in that new consciousness of what they actually probably were the entire time, but we just were asleep to it, but like and then finally you get into kind of the end of the drama. There's some like disturbing, I felt kind of like a disturbing moments at times, and then there was like a strength that came from just facing it, and being able to provide comfort in the face of that fear, I feel like was a very big milestone for like our relationship, even at the end, whereas like seeing something that put me into a state of fear, the reminder came, was like, how do you think she feels, and to be strong and feel the fear, but act anyway, and not let it dominate the moment, and so instead of letting the fear dominate the moment, using those types of moments of the unknown to extend love even in that situation. And ask yourself, how would Jesus handle this situation for all these dying people that call out to him? How does he handle all these kinds of dying moments? With fear and hysteria? I don't think so. And so trying to embody that towards the end, and being able to successfully, even at the very end, it crossed into Sunday. She survived that whole day into Sunday, and I had to be at church. I had to get up for like, because I play in the band at church, and so like I had to be there at 7:45, and so I was trying to stay with her for her last breath, and got to a spot though where there was some drama that was going on, and then just silence and stillness, and then gentle breathing. I had a feeling that she was waiting to pass until I was no longer checking, watching, and I feel like you experience death a lot, through going to sleep every night, and entering the realm of the absolute, and with that, I wanted to show her, how to let go by just letting go and going to sleep, and when I woke up, then she was gone, and I thought I would feel some sort of relief, like I felt like when my dad passed, like a sense of relief, like he's done enduring that, thank God. But with her being right next to my side, I thought I would feel the same way, but I just started crying like a baby. And yeah, it was difficult, and going to church and playing guitar, and didn't really. It said something to the people that were like up there, but I didn't really say anything to anybody about it. My wife's out of town, and my stepdaughter, she's dealing with her own grieving process, losing a friend, and so trying not to, try to burden anybody with that, and so yeah, I ended up going to my mom's and burying her. Luckily, they got a tractor with a backhoe, and they were able to dig the hole for me, and I was able to get out there with her, and say goodbye. But even in that, trying to realize more and more so we're still connected. Her body may be gone, but her essence, her soul, her divine spark, is still one with the Creator. And our relationship was reflective of a relationship that you can still connect with their essence and their energy. And as you do that, a lot of times you'll start to see signs that show like things that either their name comes to you, anything and everything can be like brought to your awareness, versus like if you're not in this like, oh, it's just a coincidence, everything in my life is a big gigantic fucking coincidence, and it's just like once you let that go and you're open to stuff like that, you start seeing it more and more everywhere, and especially when you're not in a bunch of fear in your mind and in reactivity all the time, just getting lost in your own thoughts. But when you're able to stay still and be kind of just in a, I wouldn't say open, but you just like just a state of peace of mind, when things then hit your attention and awareness, it's even more symbolic because it's deliberate, and at the same time, there's a lot of peace that comes from that. Like I said, she will be missed. I'd have some adjusting to do with, just the amount of tension and efforting and energy that I was like putting into this last bit of our relationship. Tending to her and taking care of her as much as I was. It's weird, looking back at like, I don't have to worry about like getting home to let the dog out, and I don't have to worry about like her health, and I don't have to worry about like tending to her, and it's weird, it kind of feels freeing on some level, and I hope that she feels free too, to pursue whatever's next for her soul. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I know people that are dealing with these kinds of losses, and it's really intense and tragic. My aunt, she just lost her dog, and it's like a Christian person, you're supposed to love people and stuff, but like I love that dog more than most people by a fucking long shot, not even close. And so and I think a lot of people feel that way, especially people that have been traumatized by a lot of like abusive behavior in others. You don't get that with the dog, and then you value that kind of relationship a lot. And so yeah, just hopefully share that, and hopefully that helps anybody that's like trying to make sense of it, to process it, to realize that they are not gone, that you're still connected with their essence, and that you can connect through God, and look symbolically at that relationship as being a new aspect of your relationship with God. So it's like if you lose a friend, that was basically like symbolic of like God's friendship towards you, that the way that works, at least in my opinion, at least that's how I interpret it. And so with that being said, I think I'm balanced. So thanks everybody for liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking stuff, and until the next now, God bless.